Finally made it back home. I am so exhausted. Time to get some sleep. A few days later. Yep, that's me all right. You're probably wondering how I got into this situation. Well, it all started when I took a little peek into the Lore of Mesmer. Greetings, Teslamancers! I am Borsenberger, bringing you yet another episode of Tesla Stuff, and this is the only game left in the backlog that I have not yet talked about. Before I can talk about the lore, though, I first have to broach the somewhat delicate subject of why you may not have even heard of this game. Mesmer has the unfortunate reputation of being the most critically disliked and the worst selling among Rain's games set in the Teslagrad universe. Does that mean it's a bad game? Absolutely not. The graphics are colorful and fully 3D rendered, the music is top-notch as always. The problem, I think, was that it was an ambitiously experimental game, and you could reasonably argue that the experiment failed. But you know what? In a games industry where too many companies are chasing sales by making knockoff copycats of overdeveloped genres, or cranking out the same titles year after year, or even abandoning their own creativity in favor of AI slop, you have to give Rain credit for taking the risk and trying something different. Sometimes those risks pay off and give us something truly unique and unforgettable. The cause of Mesmer's failure, I think, was typecasting. A lot of players approached it expecting it to be a Metroidvania like Teslagrad, or an action-adventure game like World to the West, and instead it turned out to be more like a board game. For people like me who like board games, it clicked. For others, it didn't, and when it didn't, it became unapologetically difficult. Going in the completely opposite direction from World to the West's rigid linearity, Mesmer is so non-linear that some players became confused, lost, and frustrated due to the lack of guidance. It was very much a choose-your-own-adventure type of game, which makes it very difficult for me to describe the story when the story is entirely driven by the player. But I shall start as I always do, by outlining the backstory. Mesmer, the game, takes place within Mesmer, the city, located in Mesmer, the country. The main character is Miss Teri de Bell, whom we have previously seen in Teslagrad, and who played a major role in World to the West, where she was introduced as an adventurer, a treasure hunter for hire, who was then double-crossed by her employer, the Motorland mogul Tycoon. As an affluent native of Mesmer, she is proficient in utilizing their infamous mind-bending technology, which she eventually uses to exact revenge upon Tycoon by mind-controlling him and forcing him to destroy his own superweapon. She also seems to have a collection of romance novels with titles reminiscent of Indiana Jones movies. In the beginning of Mesmer, Miss Teri is wearily returning to her hometown, to a very strange sight of people sweeping flower petals from the streets while wearing horsehead masks. She gets stopped by a local policeman and shows him her identification, and then heads into her house to get some sleep. Early the next morning, she is awoken by Jessica Earhart, the airship captain whom we also previously saw in World to the West. Although an airship captain she is no longer, thanks to the police taking her ship without any due process, following a surprise embargo banning all imported goods by the decree of the King of Town.
Hello, my loyal subjects. I am the King of Town.
No, not that King of Town. Jessica is now working down at the local cannery, but the working conditions are horrible. She wants to organize a strike and asks for Teri's help in getting at least 3 workers to agree to join. We step outside and the gameplay begins. As I said before, this game is non-linear. We have full autonomy at this point, so we could completely ignore Jessica's request and go wherever we choose. But since we're here for the story, we will start with Jessica Earhart's plan to form a union and organize a strike. As the starting quest line, it's the perfect example to illustrate how the game works, so I'm going to cover it in great detail. Let's go talk to the workers at the cannery to find out just how dire the situation is. Finn Flounder will be our first example in showing how Mesmer is a game of social manipulation and reputation. To convince Finn to join the strike, we can spin the wheels of chance. More likely than not, however, we're going to fail the attempt because the chance of us hitting 4 out of 4 is slim. The first wheel represents Teri's personal relationship with Finn, and the second is Teri's relationship with his faction, the Workers. If we can improve those relationships, then we'll get better spin wheels with higher numbers on them. But you can see that there are also ways to add to the spin total via different methods of coercion: bribery, food, threats, and blackmail. The last 3 of those are grayed out because we don't have any food, nor do we have any means of intimidation. Alternatively, we can do a mission for him, which bypasses the lucky spin entirely, but it puts an obligation upon Teri to finish the mission within its time limit, or else she'll lose reputation with Finn and the Workers. Finn had to pawn his wedding ring to afford food. He agrees to join the strike, but in return, Teri must get the ring back from the pawn shop. The next person at the cannery that I will talk to is the boss himself, Bass Herringbone. I only need to spin a 1 to get some canned fish from him, but because missions are lore, I'm taking his mission instead. He wants Teri to check on his nephew, Finn Blubber, who is living in Underbridge, the shady area of town. This mission will be put on the back burner for now. Let's collect the missions from the rest of the cannery workers. Here's Eric Clampton. What a name. He simply wants a sandwich. Travis Lamprey says he locked himself out of his house? Yes, of course, his house. He wants a lockpick. Again, something acquired from the pawn shop. Jacques Mackerel will join the strike if you talk to his wife and convince her that it's the right thing to do. Clara Muscle wants a single scruple, the currency of Mesmer. We currently have 5, but as you'll soon see, we need to be careful with money management. We'll come back to her later. Marlin Snapper wants us to talk to Andre Bate, who keeps stealing his lunch from the cannery kitchen. When we confront Andre, he gives up the sandwich, at the cost of getting mad at us and making us lose reputation with the Workers. Not to worry, with all of these missions we're collecting, we'll be maxing out our Workers' reputation by the end of the day. Speaking of missions, Andre's price for joining the strike is a hamwich. He has expensive tastes. Let's talk to Crispina Crust, the cannery food vendor. If we spin 4 out of 4, she'll give us a sandwich. Not likely to happen. You'll notice that for her, the food option is red. As a grocer, she's immune to coercion by food. She already has plenty of food. We can buy a sandwich or a hamwich from her, but due to rationing, we can only buy one thing. Let's hold off until we know what we need to buy from her and if we can afford it. Lisa Flounder is easy to convince. We just need to inform her that her husband Finn Flounder has already joined the strike. She immediately joins as well. Alright, now we can start sorting this business out. First, we give Marlin Snapper the sandwich that Andre Bates snatched. Mission complete. Every mission completed gives a reputational boost to the person themselves, as well as their faction. Next, let's go to the pawn shop and spend 4 scruples to buy the wedding ring and a lockpick. Told you, our money goes fast. Give the lockpick to Travis Lamprey. Mission complete. You should notice that every time we complete a mission, an hour of time passes. We need to complete all of the workers' missions before nightfall when curfew hits. Now we go back to Finn Flounder and give him back his wedding ring. Done. With 3 missions complete, we have ranked up our reputation with the workers from bronze to silver. This will reflect in an upgraded spin wheel for the workers' faction. Now let's talk to Jacques Mackerel's wife, Atuna Mackerel. I love these names. Atuna Mackerel is understandably upset that striking could jeopardize things with food and rent being as expensive as they are. However, it's not too hard to convince her with a single spin. Spinning the wheel of negotiation also consumes an hour of game time. With her blessing secured, we can report back to Jacques. Mission complete. Let's go back to Clara Muscle. We can ask her about money, and she drops a hint that the bank can provide if we're desperate enough. We do have 1 scruple left, and Clara will receive it. Mission complete. We have now ranked up our reputation with the workers from silver to gold. Our other 2 workers want a sandwich and a hamwich, and we're currently flat broke. Let's report our progress to Jessica Earhart and see what she can do for us. She pays us 3 scruples for convincing the cannery workers to strike. However, she wants us to procure some additional cash. She knows a real estate mogul across the street by the name of Ford Closure. She wants us to persuade him to contribute a donation. To help with this, she gives us a piece of blackmail, an envelope containing some compromising details regarding his financial solvency, or lack thereof. When we speak to Ford, we can ask him for 3, 5, or even 7 scruples. However, if we try for 7, we can only spin a maximum of 7 out of the 8 required, even with the blackmail. So we will scale down to negotiating for 5 scruples, and he offers us a mission for that much. He wants us to shake down Luigi Sardini for 3 scruples in unpaid rent. To help with that, he refers us to a gentleman by the name of Snout Stitches, a gang leader who isn't afraid to use violence. He gives us a sandwich to help convince Snout to help. When we talk to Snout and ask for his power of persuasion, he has a mission for us. His gang activity has made his neighbors lodge complaints against him. He wants us to convince 4 of them to retract their grievances. Now we can talk to Luigi Sardini, who is understandably unwilling to just hand over rent money to a stranger claiming to be working for his landlord. He has no mission, so we'll have to spin for it. Since we're gold with the workers, we have 2 faction wheels now. The threaten option is green, meaning Luigi is vulnerable to it, and the extra spin wheel it provides will have larger than normal values. We hit a 14 and take his money. Returning to Ford Closure, we pay Luigi's money and gain a couple of points of reputation for the merchants. Ford offers us a follow-up mission to steal a valuable ruby from the Affluent Society to prove that insuring it is a bad idea. I'm going to decline this mission for now because I don't want to take on too much obligation at this time. Curfew is only 8 hours away, and right now, I don't even have a way to get to the Affluent Society, let alone burglarize it. We return to Jessica Earhart and find she's one of the folks who complained about Snout Stitches. Luckily, we only need to spin a 1 to convince her to retract her statement. Easy. Easy. We give her Ford Closure's money, and her next mission for us is to acquire a snout flute from Snout Stitches. Because she also knows that Snout loves food, she gives us a sandwich. Now we can wrap up our obligations to the cannery workers. We go back to Crispina Crust and buy a hamwich with our remaining 3 scruples. This hamwich is given to Andre Bate. Mission complete. We have now reached Platinum rank, maxing out our reputation with the workers. Now, where's Eric Clampton? Ah, here he is. He went down to the crossroads. Have a sandwich. Mission complete. Only 3 hours left for completing our missions. Back to Snout Stitches. We already have a mission from him, so we'll have to spin for the flute. The food option is green, and the sandwich is just what he's looking for. 5 points needed, and we get a 6. Back to Jessica Earhart. She tells us to keep the flute. It will prove to be handy transportation. She has one final request for us, and that is to procure 4 sandwiches to help feed the workers during their strike. 4 sandwiches? And we only have 1 hour left for it? Man, I hope Mesmer has a good caterer. Since we already bought food from Crispina Crust, we'll need to go to a different food vendor. Gouda Nacho runs Fat Goose Foods. For 4 sandwiches, she wants us to get her some dried tingleberries. Fine, whatever, just hand over those sandwiches. I'm in a time crunch. We give Jessica the sandwiches and our time is up. We could push into curfew if we don't mind dodging the police on patrol. We can even take on missions that ask us to do illegal activities, such as the Ruby Heist, which can only be done at night. For now, I will have Teri obey the curfew and go to bed. However, the damage has already been done. Even if you chose to completely ignore the workers' strike mission and take the reputation hit from failing it, merely associating with Jessica Earhart has aroused the suspicion of the police state. Teri gets a visit from Felix Brass, the chief of the secret police. He asks her to come outside and witness an assembly, where Jessica is being put on public display for her rebellious behavior. Her punishment is Equestration, a horsehead mask. stuffed with a mind-bending concoction that subdues the wearer and turns them into a docile, obedient worker. The spectacle causes Marlin Snapper, one of the cannery workers, to turn to Teri for help, imploring her to pick up where Jessica left off and gain the support of the public at large to make real, lasting change. He gives her an object called a crowd horn, a megaphone with mind-bending powers to help convince the people to aid her cause by holding public speeches. Only mindbenders can have them, so Teri's possession of this item is illegal. But with the secret police already knocking on Teri's door, the situation has become desperate, and Teri must do whatever she can to avoid arrest and find a way to overthrow this oppressive regime. To do that, we need to appeal to the people and get them on our side. The public is divided into several factions. We have already seen the workers, whose labor forms the backbone of society and who are fed up with the low pay and exploitative working conditions. Then we have the merchants, shopkeepers, business owners, and landlords who are angry that their economic wealth is being drained by the king's taxes. The artisans, crafters, painters, poets, intellectuals, and academics, progressive-minded folk who are advocates of freedom and liberty. The underworld, the downtrodden and destitute rogues and rebels of society who have resorted to a life of crime to get by. They flout the law and anyone associated with it. And the nobility, who hold wealth and aristocratic power through bloodlines and tradition, and even they are beginning to question the dubious actions of their king. All 5 of these factions are in opposition to the 6th faction, the State, represented by the Academy of Mindbenders, the secret police force, and of course, the King of Town.
And furthermore, now I'm going to eat this bowl of corn dog batter.
No, not that King of Town. So now at the start of Day 2, the main objective becomes very clear. Start a revolution and dethrone the king. Let's use our crowd horn to make a speech so I can show how it works. You have 3 options for which group you want to appeal to. You choose one and gain reputation with that group. The top left corner of the dialog box shows the speech options that are coming up in future turns. On the right is a tug-of-war meter between the people and the police. After every dialogue chosen, the police will push back. The longer the speech goes on, the stronger the police presence becomes and the harder they will push back. When you rank up with a faction, they will push the meter forward towards revolution. If you add reputation to a faction that is already maxed out at platinum level, they push the meter forward a significant amount. After every speech action, a particular group airs a grievance and demands to be heard. If you don't or can't appease them, you'll lose reputation with that group. However, if you can choose a speech action that appeals to that group, you will nullify the negative and turn it into a positive. Since it's early in the game, we don't have enough reputational clout to push forward hard enough to start the revolution, so the police eventually barge in and break up the crowd. Our crowd horn is now spent, and to continue rallying the people, we need to find another. We had an overarching quest line on Day 1 to guide us along, but now that guidance is gone, and we are truly on our own to pursue any number of different avenues and interact with whomever we want. But as we have already seen, resource management in this game can be pretty tight. The most precious resource of all is time, and the best way to spend our time is by doing missions for people. The factional reputation gains that we get from completing missions not only increase our likelihood of a successful revolution, they increase our likelihood of successful spins, and they also buy us more time in the form of protection against our imminent arrest. Still, to see everything that Mesmer has to offer will take multiple playthroughs, so in order to facilitate that, there will be a couple of times where I will need to edit my save file, especially for showing off all of the gossip and the multiple endings. But right now, we are confined to Mesmer West, and in order to travel to the other areas of the city, we need to get access. Security checkpoints divide the city into Mesmer West, Mesmer East, Estetica, and the Underbridge. At the north end is the King's Royal Palace, but that's off limits for now. We can skip the security checkpoints and sneak into other parts of the city by the use of grappling hooks purchased from shady places like the pawn shop, but we'll take the more permanent approach by walking into the police station and asking them for a pass. We'll need to spin for it and also add a bribe for the officer because a basic spin won't be enough. So, let's get some bribery money. Ford Closure has the personality trait Coward, meaning he's vulnerable to threats. So we can spend a threat to squeeze 7 scruples out of him. Hey, he asked us to make friends with Snout Stitches, I'm just repaying him the favor. Now let's get our passes. I was lucky enough that I didn't have to save scum this. 3 scruples in bribery money spent, 3 successful negotiations with the police, and 3 passport stamps in hand. Now we can explore the entire city. So at this point, I feel I have shown enough of the core gameplay. I will not cover the rest of the game in the same amount of detail. Instead, I will focus on some story arcs that I think are particularly interesting because they weave a cohesive narrative. The first story arc, of course, was the cannery workers' strike. The next one I'm going to call Links to World to the West. The building next door to Teri's house is a hospital. The doctor inside very strongly resembles Dr. Hypodermia in World to the West. We can ask her if she's Anglorian. She confirms that she is, and she laments Mesmer's lack of medical science compared to her home country. We ask if she knows Lord Clonington. Of course she does. She calls him the perfect Anglorian. Then she says that her colleague, Hypodermia, is supervising Clonington's condition. So that establishes that this doctor is not Hypodermia, but she looks so eerily similar. Could she be Hypodermia's twin sister? Or could she even be a clone? I would not put it past Hypodermia to clone herself. Speaking of Clonington, some gossiping nobles on the street mention that he visited Mesmer's affluent society a few years ago, and they describe him as a ghastly brute. I suppose by the time we saw him in World to the West, he was busy making a worldwide tour of all of the affluent societies. In Mesmer East, there is an adventurer's shop owned by a person named Rufus Tumble. He calls himself a professional adventurer and boasts of his many excursions abroad. Teri can ask him if he has ever been to the World to the West. He spins a yarn, but Teri can tell from the incorrect details that he's lying and he's never been to the West. He's actually just a collector of a series of adventure romance novels featuring stories about Teri herself, and uses those as inspiration for his lies. But it seems Teri has gotten herself a bit of a scandalous reputation in Mesmer regarding these adventure novels, since she's supposed to be acting like a prim and proper member of nobility. Getting more information about this takes a bit of setup, but the payoff is well worth it. Baldrian Blame is a gang leader in Aesthetica. He has been banned from The Murder, a cafe run by a brooding fellow by the name of Niels Raven, and his sister, a poet and novelist named Bella von Graven. Baldrian wants us to talk to them to get him back into the place. They say that Baldrian made threats against Bella by saying her poetry should be locked away and she should be taken out. Baldrian explains it was a misunderstanding. Her poetry should be preserved because of how good it is, and he wanted to take her out in the sense that he wanted a date with her. When we tell Bella about this, she agrees to lift the ban, but in return, she wants us to go to the local newspaper's office and convince them not to expose her authorship of some stories she has been writing under a pen name. So now, let's visit the Badger Gazette, run by Max Ingress. He knows he has a lucrative exposé, and he doesn't want to let go of it. He asks if we even know what Bella's stories are about. When we say no, he reveals that Bella is the author of the now infamous series of adventure romance novels featuring Teri DeBelle. Despite the lack of transparency on Bella's part, we still aim to keep our word and stop the publication with a convincing spin. The more interesting outcome, though, is if we intentionally fail this spin, Max Ingress will offer to interview Teri in exchange for dropping the story on Bella. And the questions he asks show just how over-exaggerated these adventure romance novels are. Did the natives of the New World really crown you Queen of the Jungle? Of course not. We did work with them, though. We couldn't have won the day without them. Second question. Did the antagonist, Duke Tornado, really kidnap you to marry you? That wasn't his name, and he didn't kidnap me. He tricked me. I was trapped in a cage. How did you get out? A Teslamancer literally fell from the sky. She helped me get out. Ah yes, the mysterious, what was it, Illuminosa? The helpful yet always silent sidekick? Teslamancers are rare in this age, though we're starting to see a few. What was your relationship described in one word? Strictly professional. Also, that wasn't her real name. Next question. Third question. Your love interest, a dapper Anglorian gentleman named Lord Punchalot. What can you tell me about him? Not his real name, though it is fitting. No love interest there. He was intent on dominating the local wildlife rather than being courted. I see. Fourth question. The Moonchild that you helped become a real human, was that through the power of kindness or subjugation with your astonishing mind-bending? That child didn't come from the moon, and he was more than capable of handling himself. Alright, what was your relationship like? How did a child left in the jungle handle himself, as you say? We worked together, and I've seen him crunch through grooves and critters twice his size like nobody's business more than once. And with that, Max Ingress is satisfied. But let's dive into Teri's past a bit further as we explore her history in Mesmer. Our next destination is the Mindbending Academy in Estetica. Teri remembers attending the academy 6 years ago before dropping out and going adventuring instead. But the feeling inside the academy has changed. It used to be such a free-spirited community. Now the depths of the human mind are no longer explored. They are invaded. Upstairs is the office of the headmaster, Dragobert Damal. Now, I need to take a quick sidestep to properly introduce him, since this is a very important character. If you recall my segment on Minute Mayhem in my previous video, The Lore of World to the West, Dragobert Damal is based on the other Mesmerian character from Minute Mayhem, whose original name was Dr. Dome. This was his biography. The field of psychology is still a fresh one in Chroma, still confined to a small core of Mesmerian scholars and seen as a pseudoscience at best by anyone not directly involved with its development. Dr. Dome has proven, however, that it's never too early to take one's studies in radical new directions. His peers spend a lot of time conversing with their patients to find the source of their troubles, a practice Dome finds entirely ridiculous. A physician doesn't let his patients diagnose themselves, so why should a psychotherapist allow it? No, Dr. Dome, as far as the doctor himself is concerned, can quite easily tell what's wrong with people. The hard work lies in getting them to realize he's right. Dome has spent decades fabricating neuroses in his patients and subsequently curing them, usually for a hefty fee. There are few services more expensive than the doctor's, but one cannot argue with success rates. Using his considerable fortune and innate understanding of the human mind, Dr. Dome has developed an array of tools and techniques to reshape or devastate the psyche of anyone who might offend, annoy, or inconvenience him. Dragobert Damal has a grand vision to transform Mesmer into a paradise, or an authoritarian hellscape, depending on who you ask. He believes in a natural order of the strong dominating the weak, that the concept of free will leads to chaos, and subjecting all dissent among the population through equestration is the solution. And he has a royal decree signed by the king giving him the authority to realize this vision through the use of the secret police. Definitely a lawful evil character. Now, back to the topic of Teri. He remembers her from 6 years ago as the smug and spoiled daughter of Gerard de Belle. He remembers the students with capacity for greatness, as well as the troublemakers. Teri is obviously the latter, as he recalls her questioning the ethics of his teachings, skipping class, and daydreaming about adventure. She flunked out after only 1 semester. Another character with information on Teri's past and the current situation is Daisy Crocus, who is running a flower shop in Mesmer East. She was once the head botanist of the Mindbending Academy, and she reveals that the flower petals we see being spread throughout the streets are from passiflowers, which she had a hand in cultivating. They produce a calming effect on the mind. The horsehead masks are stuffed with them, cranking up the effect from calming to mind-numbing. She objected to having the flowers used like this, and in response, she was kicked out of the Mindbending Academy. Now there is a squad of mask wearers called petalmen who sweep away the old petals at night and scatter new ones to help keep the population docile. And in order to keep up with the demand for fresh passiflowers, the Mindbenders have been converting farmland into flower fields, thereby causing the rationing due to food shortages, as well as buying land from the nobles to expand the flower growing operation, including the purchase of land from Gerard de Bell, Teri's father. Looks like we need to have a little chat with him. Gerard de Bell is extremely upset that Teri abruptly disappeared 6 years ago with no contact since. He has been so worried, in fact, that he has been reading the adventure romance novels featuring Teri just to get any information about what she's been up to, even if most of it is fictional. If we ask him for a small amount of money, we can take a mission where Teri gives a full and formal apology for running off and causing him to worry. This settles a little bit of the tension, but there is still a lot of emotional baggage to unpack here regarding the family dynamic. Gerard's father was a hard man, leaving Gerard emotionally stunted. Being members of nobility, Gerard's father would not allow his son to marry anyone not associated with royal blood. Teri's mother was an adventurer who found rare treasure and used that newfound wealth to hobnob with the upper class at the affluent society where she met Gerard. There was no record of her family background to satisfy Gerard's father's demands, but love won out, and the two married soon after Gerard's father passed away. Shortly before Teri was born, Gerard learned that his wife was a commoner, and that Teri would be shamed as a half-shine, the offspring of an interclass marriage. But they realized that they were still the same people regardless of their class differences, so her ancestry became a family secret. Teri was raised as a full-blooded noble, and Teri's mother was savvy enough to blend in. All was well until Teri's mother died in a freak accident involving an airship explosion. At that point, Gerard's softness faded, and he returned to his father's ways, attempting to control Teri and prevent her from going on adventures for fear of losing her as well. But it was likely this overbearing attitude that drove a wedge between them instead. Gerard wants her daughter to settle down and integrate into the royal court, to complete her studies at the Mindbending Academy and fulfill her duty as a noble and as his heir. Teri tries to tell him that the Mindbending Academy is no longer an institution of education, and tells him about the problems going on in the city, the low wages, the food shortages, selling the family lands for growing passiflowers, the secret police, the Equestrations. But he's so insulated from the common folk that he doesn't believe any of it. He dismisses it all as conspiracy theories and fully trusts the king to provide for the people and prevent any problems from happening. It takes a convincing spin to get Gerard to realize that Teri is serious and to listen to her cause. He doesn't like the idea of overthrowing the king and betraying his fellow nobility, but he trusts Teri's conviction and agrees to risk his own standing to help convince the others. Now, after seeing all of this, you may be thinking, as I was thinking, wait a minute, how old is Teri exactly? Teri appears in Teslagrad's 100% ending alongside Lord Clonington, and lore-wise, that was at least 25 years ago, which means by the time she returns to her hometown, Teri should be in her 40s. But Mesmer is putting her at just 6 years past university age, or around 24. Well, I asked about this, and Rainy Pete acknowledged the discrepancy, and resolved it by saying the adventurer we see in Teslagrad is Teri's aunt. I guess everyone on her mother's side caught the adventuring bug. But to truly get to the heart of Teri's thoughts on her past, let's find out from Teri herself. If we break into Daisy Crocus's flower shop at night and enter her laboratory, we find a prominent flower sitting atop a pedestal. If we smell it, Teri tries to articulate the scent, and then slips into a hallucinogenic flood of reminiscent memories. The campfire crackles. To your right sits the muscle-brained Anglorian gentleman. To your left, the Electropian girl and the kid from Motorland. That strange blue woman sits directly across from you. She speaks of lost temples and ancient monsters. You've never heard her be this coherent before. This must be important. For those who don't know, this is the campfire scene with Tanok from World to the West. The next memory is from the day Teri left Mesmer 6 years ago. I can still see Mesmer in the distance behind me. I'm finally out. No more fancy dresses and polite tea parties. I'm sure Father won't approve. This isn't about what he wants. I know he cares, but after Mother died, he's been suffocating me with all this high society stuff. I want to be like Mother was before she met him. I want a roaring campfire, trusty comrades, and an adventure on the horizon. Maybe I'll start off with some work for hire. The final vision goes even further back in time. The child had trouble sitting still on her mother's lap. With stars in her eyes, she listened, while her mother regaled her with tales of adventure and daring do's. Admiration and idolization mixing in the girl to instill a sense of wonder not soon forgotten. "And then what happened?" the girl asked. Here, the older woman's story takes a darker turn. She is defeated, and the villain stands tall. But her friends pull through in the end, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. The young girl fell asleep in her mother's lap with a smile on her face. Isn't that adorable? And just like that, the hallucination ends, and Teri is snapped back to reality. So now that we have fully explored Teri's past, we can get more information on what else is happening in the city. And a great way to do that is by talking to the press. Teri can take a mission from Max Ingress to interview Orden Affluenza, who is regarded as one of the richest nobles in Mesmer. This mission can go 2 different ways, and I'll cover both of them. First, you can ask him about the latest art project he has been sponsoring. It is to be a grand painting of the city, viewable by airship. He is reluctant to name the artist, but in exchange for a favor, he reveals that it is Victoria Sharp, who was adamant upon keeping her involvement a secret. When we return to Max, he senses a scoop and sends us to interview Victoria Sharp at the Triangle in Aesthetica. She wanted her name out of it because she calls his projects tasteless and tacky, and she wants to retain her integrity as an artist instead of a sellout among her fellow artisans. Her artistic integrity mostly seems to revolve around an obsession with triangles. Max Ingress loves the conflict of interest and promises that it will be a juicy story indeed. Now let's wind back time and do that mission again. The other interview topic for Orden Affluenza is his thoughts on rumors that the bank he owns is in financial trouble. Orden vehemently denies this and gets angry about it when we press him further. When we report back to Max Ingress, he immediately finds Orden's defensiveness suspicious and sends us to interview the bank manager, Gildo Dinero. Mr. Dinero wonders why the press is here again. Again? Who was here before? Some twitchy fellow named Nick, he says, asking about the money in the vault. Well, what about the money in the vault? He makes excuses about inflation and foreign debt. Sure, it's not because the bank is short on money, right? Of course not, he says. The deposits are guaranteed by the king himself. But Orden Affluenza owns the bank, and he considers all the money to be his, we say. Gildo Dinero says, without saying, that Orden Affluenza is an ignorant fool. When we report back to Max Ingress, he deduces that this Nick fellow is Nick Trinket in Underbridge, the most notorious burglar in the city. He figures the police haven't captured him either due to his craftiness or their incompetence. When we go down there to talk to Mr. Trinket, he confirms he was there. He had broken into the vault, found it was empty, left a note demanding compensation for the trouble, and then got thrown out of the bank when he came back during daytime to ask them when they were going to fill up the vault. So then he broke in again and left another note. At nighttime, we can break in ourselves and find the vault is indeed empty, along with a message written on the wall. Where is the money, Dinero? There are other hints throughout the city that the nobles are not exactly enjoying trouble-free lives. When searching through the trash cans located throughout the city, we will occasionally stumble upon a noble known only as Lady Litterbox living in one. Claiming the ability to speak to cats, handing out fish bones as medals, and objecting to her castle being called a trash can, she has gone beyond eccentricity and into full delusion. We can postulate that a traumatic incident rendered her homeless, and her inability to cope with the sudden loss of lifestyle makes Litterbox's story a tragic one indeed. For another piece of noble ignobility, Gato de Claw in Aesthetica wants us to dig up some dirt on Officer Brass Sr. of the Aesthetica Police. Speaking with Brass Sr. ourselves, we learned that he was formerly in the military during the Electropian Wars. Of course, he's not going to divulge his secrets on his own, so we need to visit the go-to dirt digger in Aesthetica, Niels Raven. Through him, we find out that Officer Brass Sr. was almost dishonorably discharged because he committed a war crime during the Electropian Wars. Gato de Claw is thankful indeed for this information. Why? We'll find out later. And while we're exposing noble ignobility, let's raid the affluent society. Way back on day 1, Ford Closure wanted us to break in and steal a red ruby to prove that it was too insecure to be insured. Well, when we do that, Ford panics and says he didn't want us to actually steal it, just demonstrate that it could be stolen. So he sends us there again to put it back, along with a note saying, "I touched your ruby." I also made the point of coming back to the affluent society with 25 scruples in my inventory. You'll see why in a second. If we go upstairs to the lounge and sit down, we notice an odd, unfamiliar painting. Pulling on it reveals a lever that opens a secret passage in the vestibule. When we go down that passage, we find a note talking about the affluent members putting on masks, chanting, and making offerings to a shrine. We'll imitate their lead, take a mask, enter the shrine, and begin chanting. The shrine is revealed to be a large white cat-like statue. After our chanting, its mouth opens for us to make an offering. If we feed it 25 scruples, it gives us a crowd horn. From what we heard from Nick Trinket, it's clear that the Underbridgers know a lot about what's going on in the city, so let's visit them next. Very quickly, we learn that Underbridge is being run like a mafia, and the leader is Mama Payne. Through her, the Underbridgers live by the Commoner's Law. Nothing happens without Mama Payne's approval. Everyone works for the benefit of the community to make it self-sufficient. Favors are traded like currency, and nobody is afraid to dabble in crime in the name of survival. In return, Mama lives as one of them, keeping the community safe and the cops out of their business. In talking with Mama Payne, we learn that she has a crowd horn that she has no use for since she controls Underbridge just fine without it. But she knows its value, and she isn't about to just give it away. She says if we want it, we need to gain favor with the entire Underbridge faction. Again, way back on day 1, we received a mission from Bass Herringbone to check on his nephew, Finn Blubber, who lives in Underbridge. Bass has been supplying Finn with canned fish to distribute to the Underbridgers, but Finn has been selling them instead, to the ire of both the Underbridgers and Bass himself. Finn wants us to get Gal Glitz off of his back for complaining about his cannery outlet operation. Gal, however, has a different idea, and it's a perfect example of how the Underbridgers roll. She wants us to blow up Finn Blubber's houseboat. With Mama Payne's permission, of course. Sure, it fails Finn Blubber's mission, but how can we not? We talk to Mama and get her blessing, wait until nightfall, grab the box of explosives outside her house, break into the houseboat, and light her up. Beautiful. So, about that crowd horn. We now have platinum reputation with the Underbridge, and it's just enough to meet the 12 points that Mama Payne wants, but that's only with a perfect spin. But she has a weakness, the personality trait Sweet Tooth. So we're going to satisfy her craving the only way a true disciple of Underbridge can, by breaking into the Sugared Swan at night and stealing a gigantic triple-tiered chocolate cake. We then haul that cake across town while evading police capture and drop it into Mama Payne's lap, giving us a whopping 16 points of potential value added to our spin. With this, we can easily meet the necessary total and win another crowd horn. She asks what we intend to do with it. Teri shares her plan of starting a revolution. Mama Payne likes the idea of taking over topside and running the city with an iron fist. Teri doesn't want a violent insurrection, but Mama says that's exactly what will need to happen in order to subdue the police, the Mindbenders, and the king. Teri says she'll think about it. Finally, Mama Pain leaves us with a warning. There is someone even above her who is running the entire city from the shadows. Intriguing. Let's find out more. In speaking with Officer Astuto of the Mesmer East Police for information about crowd horns, he doesn't hesitate to let us know that his information is for sale. With a convincing spin, he drops a clue that a person known as the Fat Cat has access to crowd horns. But who is it? With this bit of information, we can begin asking around. Niels Raven, the dramatic dealer of gossip and aesthetica, gets dark, dramatic, and elusive when the topic of the Fat Cat comes up. Well, more so than usual. He doesn't know them personally, but he knows who has contact with them, and we need a convincing spin to demonstrate our willingness to burden ourselves with this potentially dangerous knowledge. The names are Mama Pain and Felicia Brass. Speaking the name Fat Cat to Mama Pain again brings caution that we're dealing with dangerous knowledge. Another convincing spin reveals that Fat Cat is no ordinary topsider. He is a noble. His family works as the police, and he is very protective of his reputation. For more information, she refers us to Felicia Brass at the Curious Cat in Mesmer East. We have to talk to Mama Pain first before Felicia hints that she knows something. When we ask her about Fat Cat, it takes a third convincing spin to reveal that Fat Cat is Gato de Claw, her brother. Finally, bye Felicia! We will discuss the implications of this family relationship later. For now, let's go visit the man himself. When we speak his pseudonym, he is unhappy that Teri has him at a disadvantage, and demands to know who divulged his identity. If we tell him it was Mama Pain, he will tell us to relay a message that he is very upset with her. She, in turn, will then get very upset with us. Instead, we can truthfully tell him it was Felicia Brass, and he can only sigh in exasperation over his sister's inability to keep her mouth shut. On to the subject of crowd horns. He has one, and he won't be parting with it easily. Like Mama Pain's crowd horn, it takes a 12-point spin to acquire. Even though Mama Pain said he's fearfully protective of his reputation, his reputable character trait seems to make him resistant to blackmail instead of vulnerable to it. I believe that is a bug. Since he's also resistant to threats and bribery with valuables, we're going to have to go with food. A chocolate cake, a hamwich, and a sandwich gets us the maximum possible spin total of 28 points. The rest is up to luck. There is one more crowd horn to find, and it takes us into the heart of the Mindbending Academy. Daisy Crocus, the former botanist of the Mindbending Academy, has a mission for us to break into a greenhouse at night to procure a reroll flower. After collecting and delivering it, she uses it to sprout more of them. We will get another one from her to take with us. Down in the basement of the Mindbending Academy is Fritz Gizmo, lead inventor. He is the person who invented the crowd horns, and naively thinks by serving the Academy he is serving the public interest. He has no crowd horns since the headmaster has confiscated them all along with their blueprints, but he does have a broken one in his workshop that he could repair and sell to us, as long as we help him build up his shop by stocking a couple of other items first. His first request, as you may have guessed, is a reroll flower. The next thing he wants to put into his shop is quick think fluid. As opposed to crowd horns, which affect other people, quick think fluid is legal in Mesmer because it only affects the imbiber. To sell it, he wants us to take care of a complaint from Victoria Sharp, which made him pull it from the market. When we talk to her and convince her with a spin to retract her complaint, she says that she only brought up the complaint in the first place because the fluid was not in a triangular bottle. Yeah, unhealthy fixation there, lady. When we bring the good news to Fritz Gizmo, he is more than happy to put the quick think fluid into pyramid-shaped bottles. He even gives us a bottle for free. Finally, we can get to the topic of crowd horns. He was able to repair his crowd horn, but to sell it to us, we need to secure permission from the headmaster, or else he could get into trouble. When we go upstairs and tell Dragobert de Mal, he does the very predictable action of going downstairs, confiscating the crowd horn, and locking it in his office. When we return to Fritz and tell him the bad news, we then get a mission to steal the crowd horn from the headmaster's office. We return to the Mindbending Academy at night with 2 lockpicks in hand. Before we raid the headmaster's office, we'll take a quick detour downstairs. In a classroom near the workshop, we get a feeling that we're being watched. As we approach, a malevolent gaze follows us. It's coming from a cage in the back of the classroom. The source is a chicken that has been used in mind-bending experiments by the students. We can feed it one of a variety of things, but there is an achievement that can be earned by giving it Fritz Gizmo's Quick Think fluid. In a flash of insight, it leaps to the door of its cage, inserts a claw into the lock, and with some manipulation and concentration, opens the lock of its cage and disappears into the darkness. This is the lock-pickin' chicken. Inside Fritz Gizmo's workshop, which hasn't been cleaned since the Battle of Teslagrad, we find an assortment of blueprints and documents. The oldest document is simply marked Bird, and features a diagram of a mechanical contraption the size of a house. Featuring blue feathers and reflective varnish, the name Faradeus is written in the bottom corner. The inventor's name has been scratched out. The mechanical parts were imported from Motorland, but its brain was made in Mesmer. The phrase, "This one won't go insane and kill everyone," is underlined at the bottom of the page. Yeah, about that. Upstairs is the headmaster's office. We use a lockpick to break in, and after a quick search, the crowd horn is ours. Now that we have gone through the major story arcs illustrated by completing the missions, let's wrap up some extra bits of lore and then dive into analysis. The first section of this story arc is a series of burglaries that are not at all important, but I thought were entertaining enough to include, and I would not have even known about the existence of this first one had I not done the research that I did for the making of this video. The great thing about Mesmer's save file is that in addition to recording Teri's inventory, relationships, completed quests, and triggered actions, it also contains metadata on every building, every shop, and every NPC. To help gather information for this video, I wrote some Python code to parse a lot of this metadata. For example, I wrote a program to produce a list of every building in the game that can be burglarized. Most of these entries make sense, and several of them we have already seen. Aesthetica 2 is the target of a mission from Nick Trinket to steal a handful of tingleberries from a vase. But the one after that stood out. Aesthetica 26. An arbitrary apartment with no mission associated with it. I had to investigate. The first question, whose apartment is this? The metadata contains the answer, but let's have the game show us. When you advance game time to the hour before curfew, every NPC leaves their workplace and walks to their home. So let's trigger the clock and camp outside Aesthetica 26. And wouldn't you know it, this is the home of Officer Brass Sr. So, the second question, what's inside? Nicely furnished with a heavy mahogany desk and piles of unused art supplies and blank canvases. Most are untouched, except for one with a single brush stroke. Clearly the house of someone with artistic pretensions, but little incentive to put in the work. That's it. There's nothing profound about this burglary. I just thought it was interesting that it even exists. For something a bit more fun, we're going to break into the Passiflower silo next to the pawn shop in Mesmer West. In case it wasn't obvious from my ridiculous inventory, I hacked a save file full of burglary equipment for this, and I'm doing it on the night of day 1. This is one of several silos in the city that hold massive amounts of flowers for the peddlemen to distribute every night. Entering the heart of the silo, we are assaulted with the scent that tries oh so hard to convince us to just go home and get a good night's sleep. Fighting the urge with all our might, we do what must be done and set the silo on fire. I'm just going to take a moment and bask in these noxious fumes. Having done our good deed for the night, we go to bed. I filmed this on the night of day 1 because after witnessing the horsing of Jessica Earhart, We are treated to a scene of Marlin Snapper approaching us as we stand next to the charred remains of the silo. There is one more burglary that I want to share because it has the most brilliant writing in this game, and it deserves to be seen and appreciated. I hope you remember your Edgar Allan Poe, because it's time to break into Niels Raven's cafe, The Murder. Once upon a dark night fearing, out of streetlight dread and glaring, running from the guards of curfew, bursting through a cafe door. In the darkness, mental mapping of the room of beverage tapping, lots of tables used for yapping, yapping till their throats are sore. Bar for serving, quite depressing, serving tea out at a pour, serving tea, nothing more. Forgotten items under tables, lack of people, theft enables. Almost nothing lost is found, searching is a massive bore. Chairs of forest barring entry, burnt down candle standing sentry. Suddenly 2 loaves of bread surrounding a wet lump of gore. Oh, what fragrant lump of gore. It is a hamwich, nothing more. Search the bar for wanton slander, the birder's books a quick gander. Written here are scandals heavy, people's shame and darkest lore. Take one slip of darkened paper, news of someone's secret caper, someone's worst, their most obscure. Uncover blackmail, hidden pocket store, undiscovered clues galore. Leave this house of passive murder to its strange and tacit birder. Leave naught but ghost behind, bursting out a cafe door. Ah, isn't that beautiful? Alright, a couple of times now I've mentioned getting blackmail on people. Some of the secrets exposed in Blackmail I have already talked about, but there are others that I haven't. So let's collect every piece of blackmail that exists in the game. One moment, please. There. Now let's do a quick rundown of every character and see what each one is trying to hide. Bass Herringbone runs the cannery. He grew up in the Underbridge slums and was fortunate enough to move topside and become a merchant. His secret is that his cannery operation is mostly designed to send free food back down to Underbridge. He's looking out for his people, and I can respect that. Crispina Crust runs several food trucks throughout the city. Her dirty secret is that she stole a snort hog from Snout Stitch's hog riders, chopped it up, and has been selling it as Motorland ham. Pawnshop Pete sells stolen goods. Hardly surprising. Ford Closure is upside down on his assets. He owes more money than his property is worth. Victoria Hearsay is a noble who plays up her cash-poor situation by running a cafe in Mesmer West and selling juicy gossip for money. However, the owner of the rumor mill has a rumor of her own. She is in love with Bass Herringbone. Snout Stitches has a bad reputation for intimidating people. I mean, yeah, that's why we made friends with him. He's good at it. Boldo Ariel runs the print shop in West Mesmer. He is from Motorland and is deeply ashamed of it. He tries to conceal his heritage from the artisan community. When we expose his secret, he starts speaking in a thick German accent. This is not just a fluke, because one of the previews of the background art for Knucklejet shows a list of Motorland cities with Germanic names. And considering the fact that Motorland is the center for engineering in the Teslagrad universe, well, the point is not lost on me. Gouda Nacho runs Fat Goose Foods, and she has been trading with the criminals in Underbridge for additional supplies so she can serve double rations to the poor and sick. Monsieur Palette is one of the most original painters in Mesmer, but he started his career by copying the work of a forgotten Motorland painter and became famous by presenting it in Mesmer as a new wave of art. Officer Otterton of the Mesmer West Police has struck a deal sending captured criminals to the Mindbenders for unknown purposes. Daisy Crocus continues experimenting with flowers that have mind-bending properties, despite the Mindbending Academy's warning that conducting research outside of the Academy's scope is illegal. Melita Brûlé runs the Sugared Swan Bakery. She used to be a baker in the palace, but fled after an accident that nearly killed the king. Gildo de Nero knows that the Golden Calf bank vault is empty and that the bank owner, Orden Affluenza, took all of the money. Rufus Tumble runs the adventurer's shop and brags about his adventure stories, but all of them are made up from content in Teri's adventure romance novels. His only real travel is as a tourist. Max Ingress, the journalist for the Badger Gazette, frequently makes up scandalous stories so his newspapers will sell more copies. It's also a bit strange that he even has blackmail, since his inscrutable personality trait makes him immune to using it against him. Officer Astuto of the Mesmer East Police openly takes bribes from gang leaders and lets them go about their business. Gerard de Bell, Teri's father, has been collecting and reading all of the adventure romance novels featuring his daughter. He has been doing this just to get some idea of her whereabouts and well-being over the past 6 years. Niels Raven serves up Aesthetica's gossip along with bitter black tea in his cafe, but it's actually smuggled coffee beans. By order of the king, coffee is banned in Mesmer because they'd rather have the population on depressants instead of stimulants. Bella von Graven is the secret author of the adventure romance novels featuring Teri, having been writing them under a pen name. Orden Affluenza has used all of the money from the Golden Calf Bank to commission multiple ostentatious art projects. Victoria Sharp has been the commissioned artist who completed many of the art projects for Orden Affluenza, but is afraid that public knowledge of her involvement will damage her reputation in the artisan community. Baldrian Blaine claims to be the gang leader of the Dandy Skulls, but there are no Dandy Skulls, it's just blame, and without blame, it would be blameless. Moving on. Officer Frederick Brass Sr. of the Aesthetica Police lied about his age to get into the Mesmerian army when the Electropian King's invasion of Mesmer began, and was almost dishonorably discharged for committing an unspecified war crime during that time. Gatto de Claw is the Fat Cat, the criminal kingpin running the smuggling network in Underbridge. Felicia Brass, the sister of Gatto de Claw, runs the Curious Cat and has all the gossip on Mesmer East. Her cafe is unaffected by the rationing because she is supplied by the Underbridge smugglers. Felix Brass, the son of Frederick and Felicia Brass and chief of police, knows that his uncle Gatto de Claw is a criminal and helps him conduct his criminal business. Fritz Gizmo of the Mindbending Academy has been commissioned by the headmaster Dragobert de Mal to develop mind control technology, and his inventions have been instrumental in controlling the population. Dragobert de Mal, using the mind-bending tech developed by Fritz Gizmo, wants to mind control Felix Brass, the chief of police, to gain almost full control of Mesmer. Crabby Claude runs the Seaside Inn and has all the gossip on Underbridge. I couldn't figure out how to get blackmail on him, but he does have some buried within the game files. He is a hitman who has worked for Mama Payne to cause people to disappear during his fishing trips. Gal Glitz used to live and work in a shop topside, but got evicted and has been trying to blend in as an Underbridge native. Nick Trinket, the notorious burglar, romanced a noblewoman of the court, stole from her, and is now hiding from her in Underbridge. And Mama Payne, the mob boss of the Underbridge, has made a deal with her boss, the Fat Cat. A small house has been purchased in her name in Mesmer West so she can flee Underbridge and retire topside. So now let's assemble all of this secret information together into a cohesive narrative. Dragobert de Mal is trying to gain control of Mesmer through the dominating force of his secret police. However, all of his police are corrupt. Otterton is taking money on the side by arresting people and disappearing them into the experimental labs of the Mindbenders. Astuto makes it very clear that his favor can be bought. Meanwhile, the Underbridgers think that they have won their independence from the police thanks to the toughness of their matriarch, Mama Payne. Little do they know that Mama Payne has sold them out to Gatto de Claw, the Fat Cat, who has set himself up as a criminal ringleader, using the Underbridgers to run a smuggling operation, and using his nephew, Felix Brass, as chief of police, to allow the Underbridgers the freedom to operate, enriching himself and the entire Brass family in the process. But as we saw from his quest, DeClaw also wanted some leverage on his brother-in-law, Brass Sr., to mitigate his risk of getting double-crossed. As for Underbridge, we have an interesting irony going on. They haven't gained independence from the police. Instead, by proxy, they're working for the police as DeClaw's personal sweatshop. And for her complicity, Mama Payne is just a staged arrest away from enjoying a comfortable retirement, and the cadre of criminals that she managed would never know her betrayal. The merchants are feeling the squeeze due to the food rationing going on, but rather than relying on the official suppliers, they've simply started using illegal suppliers, mainly the smuggling network provided by the Underbridgers. Many of them are in debt to the bank, or worse, Mama Payne, due to the increased taxation they're facing, the increased expenses due to having to procure their supplies by illegal means, and the decreased revenue coming in from the workers, who are spending less money because they're making less money, so they have less to spend. Furthermore, the bank they all rely upon is hiding the fact that it is completely insolvent. It's a downward economic spiral that's doomed to break down and fail. The artisans are all appearing to struggle with the pressure of getting their work sold. A common thread among all of them is misrepresentation of self, working through pseudonyms, hidden identities, plagiarized works, forbidden arts, dishonest origins, and conflicted principles. The nobility is more insulated than the merchants. They have generations of wealth buffering them from the ill effects of the economy. Since they aren't personally feeling the effects of any of the problems, they assume that no problems exist. But concessions are being made. Gerard de Bell sold off all of the family's farmland to the state because it has been expanding its passiflower growing operation. That is an asset that the de Bell family isn't ever getting back. Orden Affluenza has spent all of his own savings and then used the Mesmer City Bank as his personal slush fund to obliviously commission useless art projects to no one's benefit but his own desire for a lasting legacy. Gato de Claw is aware of the plight of the people very well and is actively trying to keep things that way through his exploits. Dragobert de Maul does not reveal how much he knows about all of this corruption behind the scenes. The fact that he wants to mind control Felix Brass implies that he is aware of some of it at least, and doing so would unquestionably give him the upper hand. He could have Gato de Claw arrested quite justifiably on criminal conspiracy charges, and simultaneously crack down on all of Underbridge, which would immediately quash whatever power the Brass family think they have, and probably collapse the entire city's economy in the process. And if anyone else tried to assert their authority, they would just get arrested and horsed. This still leaves the question, though, of where the King of Town factors into all of this.
All right, gentlemen, here's how this is gonna go down. I need fried dough so bad it hurts.
No, not that King of... You know what? Let's just go pay him a visit and find out. I cleaned up my inventory a bit, because all I need for this is a single crowd horn. With all factions at platinum rank, it's incredibly easy to win the tug of war and push the populace into a riot. Only one thing to do, and that's storm the palace. Every police checkpoint becomes a barricade to smash through. Standing at the palace gates is Felix Brass and his police force. He declares the entire crowd under arrest. I hate to break the bad news, buddy, but you're horribly outnumbered. Riot smash! Our next obstacle is Dragobert de Maul and his peddlemen. He criticizes our use of mind-controlling crowd horns as being no different from his use of passiflowers, and offers us to join him and rule Mesmer as one of the noble elite. No deal. Step aside. Riot smash! And then there was one. Coming in hot and furious with the personality of... a cat? The final obstacle is the king himself, who implores this unruly crowd to come back at a more convenient time, like never. Attempting to fall back on his guards and the nobles for defense proves futile. Woe is me, he says, as we smash the final barrier and are left with the decisive choice. Should the king face exile or equestration? I didn't thoroughly test it, but it seems we only get the choice of equestration if we don't make any attempts towards negotiation in any of the dialogues during the riot. If exile is chosen instead, then we see Teri standing over a cheering crowd. Jessica Earhart and the other townsfolk who were recently equestrated get restored. The rest of these cutscenes depend on getting factions to gold status or higher, and whether or not you completed certain missions. For the artisans, Daisy Crocus gets to resume her work in horticulture without fear of indictment, and Monsieur Palette and Victoria Sharp both work on their abstract interpretations of a horse mask. Monsieur Palette's is done with all circles, and Victoria's, of course, is all triangles. For the merchants, Niels Raven gets to openly sell coffee at the Murder and entertain the company of his fellow merchants, including Max Ingress and Rufus Tumble. For the nobles, the two gossipers, Victoria Hearsay and Felicia Brass, who were in a bitter rivalry throughout the game, have now made up and are exchanging friendly banter outside the affluent society. For Underbridge, Mama Payne is still trying to keep things together. For the workers, a redistribution of wealth from the upper class gets handed out, while Jessica and Bass Herringbone look on. Finn Blubber gets his houseboat rebuilt. Look man, it's nothing personal. She offered me explosives and you only offered me a can of fish. Next time try driving a harder bargain. And finally, the quick-thinking chicken that we freed gets her revenge by summoning an army of cats to invade the Mindbending Academy. After that, the epilogue is determined by which factions you befriended, whether you chose Equestration or exile, whether or not you enlisted Gerard de Belle's help, and if you did, which option you chose for the fate of the nobles. There are also minor variations which depend on whether or not you helped Fritz Gizmo rebuild his shop. The following is a sampling of most of the possible ending scenarios. Who takes control of Mesmer? With the king gone, the administration of the kingdom was turned over to the council, an assembly of nobles led by Gerard de Belle as the chairman. Many nobles chose to be exiled with the king, while some stayed to work with the people on rebuilding the kingdom. The workers were finally allowed to organize unions. Amnesty was issued for all political prisoners. With the king gone, the administration of the kingdom was turned over to the Merchant Council, an assembly of the wealthiest traders in Mesmer. Workers and artisans were also represented in the council, but when it came to decision-making, their voices were rarely heard. With the king gone, the artisans were able to gain power and establish their own council. The first sitting of the council took 5 days, as its members could not agree on whether the new flag of Mesmer should be a circle or a triangle. They had a plethora of creative ideas, none of them matching. Things improved considerably when Boldo Ariel appointed himself as chairman and took control. With the king gone, the people seized power for themselves and established the People's Council, which consisted mostly of underbridgers. Very soon, their leader, Mama Payne, took the reins of power. With the police kicked out of the city and spread all over the kingdom, the only law in effect was Mama's Law, meaning your safety was guaranteed only by whether Mama Payne liked or disliked you. Shops and businesses were allowed to continue as before, provided they paid taxes to Mama Payne and protection fees to her gang, the latter meaning protection from being ransacked by the gang itself. The only exception was Bass Herringbone's cannery, because it supplied the underbridge with food during the rationing. With the king gone, the power was seized by the workers and their People's Council. They stripped the nobles of their titles and holdings, distributing the assets among the workers. The new council quickly became a target for criticism. However, with the help of Jessica Earhart's diplomatic skill, the crisis was averted. What happens to Felix Brass and Dragobert de Mal? Felix Brass was relieved of duty and booted from the police. The next day, afraid of repercussions and revenge from the people, he boarded the first airship out of Mesmer. Too bad the sky captain of that ship turned out to be the recently freed Jessica Earhart. Felix Brass, the police officers, and the nobles were next in line for Equestration, despite loud protests from Teri de Belle. Only when the resentment towards this punishment among Mesmer's citizens became a major concern did this practice stop. The last equestrated person was the headmaster of the Mindbending Academy, Dragobert de Mal. Felix Brass and the police officers who supported him were discharged from the police and put under arrest. One morning, the jailer found Brass's cell empty. His father, a former military and police officer, disappeared as well. along with all the members of the Declaw family. The headmaster Dragobert de Mal was arrested the same day as the former chief of secret police Felix Brass and all of the nobles. They were soon put to work in the fields alongside the peddlemen. What happens to Equestration and those who were equestrated? At the behest of Teri de Bell, those equestrated that could yet be cured were set free. Equestration was banned and the remaining horse masks destroyed. Many of the recently equestrated were set free. The rest, along with the peddlemen whose minds had deteriorated beyond salvation, were put to work in the fields, weeding out the passiflowers and replacing them with grain. At the behest of Teri de Bell, those equestrated that could yet be cured were set free. Equestration was banned and the remaining horse masks destroyed, despite protests from the artisans claiming that these masks had an aesthetic value and were an established cultural reference. Most of the peddlemen were set free. Those with their minds deteriorated beyond recognition were retired. What happens to the Mindbending Academy? The Mindbending Academy wasn't spared the change. Any mind-bending technology that had a lasting effect on people's minds was banned. The Academy and its activities were now put on watch list and subjected to control by the People's Council. The Mindbenders did not welcome this change. Many quit in protest. One day, several high-ranking Mindbenders disappeared, along with the headmaster Dragobert de Mal, their whereabouts unknown. The inventor Fritz Gizmo did not join them. Instead, he took the opportunity to reopen his workshop and develop mind-bending technology for the benefit of the people. The Mindbending Academy was open to anyone who wished to study. The inventor Fritz Gizmo lost his shop, but was appointed as a lecturer in practical mindbending. Rumor was he avoided meeting the headmaster Dragobert de Mal at all costs. The headmaster became even more reclusive, working on some secret project in his study. The Mindbending Academy became the center for culture and the hub for arts. The inventor Fritz Gizmo reopened his shop, selling devices for recreational mindbending, and made a fortune on spinners and passiflower ink. The only person to oppose this was the headmaster Dragobert de Mal, who locked himself in his office and refused to see anyone. The Mindbending Academy suffered a worse fate. Most of the mindbenders were sacked and kicked out of the city along with the policemen. A small portion of mindbenders was allowed to continue under the obligation of providing the Fancy Rats and Mama Pain with mindbending devices on demand. The Mindbending Academy and its activities were now put on the watch list and subjected to control by the People's Council. However, development and now also sale of mindbending devices were allowed. The mindbenders did not welcome this change. The only person to cheer this on was the inventor, Fritz Gizmo. He could finally reopen his shop and sell his mind-bending inventions. As for Teri, she decides to leave Mesmer once again and travel eastwards to Motorland and eventually Electropia. There, according to rumors, trouble was stirring once again. Teri offered Jessica Earhart to come with her, but Jessica refused. She said that her place was with the workers, because without her, these deck rats would sure as rain get into trouble again. After all, who knows their crew better than their captains? That's all of the normal ending material. And then we have the bad ending. If we chose to surrender to either Felix Brass or Dragobert de Mal during the riot, then a cutscene plays where Teri disgracefully boards an airship and flees while the city of Mesmer burns amid formations of policemen marching through the streets. Now that we have seen all of this, we have to wonder about the king's perspective. Clearly, Dragobert had his own agenda, but the king could have recognized what was going on and put a stop to it, but he didn't. Why? I have several theories, and it's possible for more than one of them to be true at once. I'll let you decide which ones seem plausible, and then give a hint from the game itself. The king was apathetic. He didn't care about ruling the country, and delegated the authority to Dragobert so he could be free of disturbance. The king was incompetent. He didn't have the capacity to make the important decisions needed to run a country, and he happily accepted the offer from Dragobert to take that burden from him. The king was ignorant. He was coerced into signing the delegation of authority, and then kept in an isolated bubble of attendants who gaslit him into believing that everything was perfectly fine. The king was blackmailed. Dragobert had some sort of compromising leverage over the king to extort him into signing a delegation of authority and then sitting in his pretty little palace as a figurehead and keeping quiet. The king was mind-controlled. Dragobert is a master mindbender, and he could have caused the king to sign over delegation of authority under duress. Attendants would then keep him pacified inside the palace. The king was complicit. He shared Dragobert's vision of running an authoritarian government and gave authority to Dragobert to execute their mutual objective. Which theories are correct? Well, let's see what the game says. During the RIOT dialogues with Felix Brass and Dragobert de Mal, you can try to negotiate with them to get them to stand aside. The problem with that is that they are resistant to pretty much everything. As you can see, I stacked ridiculous amounts of lucrative items into my save file, and I added the highest level of blackmail for each of them. And as far as I can tell, it's actually impossible to reach a spin total sufficiently high enough to meet Felix Brass's demand of 14 points. Dragobert de Mal wants an even higher total of 16 points, but I am able to reach that high with 8 threats from Baldrian Blame. And upon succeeding, when questioned about the king, he says that it is hard to manipulate the mind of a man whose mind is completely gone. This implies either the king was too feeble-minded to begin with, or it's a confession that Dragobert made him that way via pacification or mind control. So, with that, I feel I have put together a pretty comprehensive narrative for the Lore of Mesmer. But this video is not all of the content I am releasing. In order to get a full scope of the story, I had to talk to every NPC, complete every mission, find every crowd horn, get every achievement, and burglarize every building. I think I can confidently say that nobody else has been this thorough in recording information about Mesmer. It was necessary since there seems to be a total absence of guides about this game available online. So, because of that, I took it upon myself to publish a series of guides within the Steam community in the hope that they can help other people enjoy this game as much as I have. You'll find links to those guides in the description below. That's it for this video. We'll be visiting Motorland next when I inevitably cover the lore of Knucklejet, and that leaves Angloria as the only place in the Teslagrad universe that we have yet to see. Will that change in the future? Only time will tell. Thank you for watching.